All right, welcome everyone to this Beyond Clean LinkedIn live session. And we're also live on Facebook and YouTube as well. I am so excited. First of all, I'm Lindsay Brown from the Beyond Clean team, and I'm so excited to introduce some special guests that I have joining me today. I do hear a little bit of feedback noise. Do you guys hear that? No? Okay. Great. All right, let's get started. I want to introduce my guests today. We are going to be talking about all things motivation. We are going to be talking about all things professional development and career goals. And so I'm really excited to introduce you to Sarah B. Cruz and Rebecca Kinney. I would like to start by asking the both of you to give us just a brief introduction about yourselves. And I love, one of my favorite things to learn about people is how they got to where they are. And specifically in the sterile processing field, it seems like everyone gets to the sterile processing industry in such a unique way. And so I would love to learn from you sort of your path to sterile processing. So Sarah, why don't we start with you?
Hi. Okay. So, hi, I'm Sarah B. Cruz. I love my job, and I'll start with the fact that I am a huge CSS nerd. Hard, like glasses already equipped. And I love what I do, and I eat, breathe, and move in CSS all the time. SPD, CSS, whatever you want to call it. I'm there nerding out. And a long time ago, almost like a new life ago, I worked as a vet tech for an amazing neurosurgeon, and he inspired me to push myself further. So I really wanted to become more of an asset inside of the operating room when he's doing craniotomies and laminectomies on cats and dogs. Totally awesome. And I wanted to help with room turnover time. So I took a CSS class to figure out how to process instruments more effectively for my animal patients. And by the second class, I knew I was no longer going to be a vet tech anymore. I loved it. And if you can fall in love with CSS while learning about anatomy and physiology, you're made for it, because that's honestly the hardest. And if I have to hear more about the mitochondria being the powerhouse of the cell, no more. But I fell in love, and I just hit the road running, and I haven't looked back.
Awesome. And Becca, tell us a little bit about your journey to sterile processing.
Very good. Hey guys, I'm Becca. Sarah, thanks for sharing your story. It's funny because you say the mitochondria, and it made me laugh because I always say when I'm educating in hospitals that the mitochondria and the cell, like sterile processing is like the cell of the hospital. And without it, like nothing else can live, and nothing can actually happen. But I digress. So you guys, I worked in sterile processing for about 7 years, and I've been on the medical sales side for 7 years now too. And to be honest, I stumbled upon sterile processing by accident. So everybody in my family had always worked in the medical field, and I had been working at a retail store. I won't mention the name, and it was a special kind of challenging. If you catch my drift, they're like, "Hey, Becca, go clean the bathrooms. Hey, Becca, go get carts. Hey, Becca, did you sign anyone up for a credit card today?" And I'm like, I cannot do this. So my mom was a labor and delivery nurse for 37 years. And she said, "Hey, there's this department in the hospital called sterile processing." And I was like, "Mom, I don't know what that is. Isn't sterile a smell? Like when you go somewhere and it smells like a hospital?" And she's like, "No, honey, it's not." And so I ended up applying in sterile processing, and I got my hands working in the field, and I slowly fell in love with it. And I realized, holy cow, I can make a difference on patient safety. How cool is that? And then, over the years, I realized I could make even more of an impact if I could go on to the sales side and educate people every single day. So now I work with 12 sterile processing departments, and I am blessed with the opportunity to educate daily, weekly, monthly, and just get in these facilities and teach them the things I didn't know when I was a sterile processing technician. So that's kind of how I got my start. It was an accident.
That's amazing. And I'm just going to fix some technical issues that we're experiencing right now. So give me a quick second.
How's everybody doing? Thank you for being on. We appreciate you being here.
Absolutely. And we do have the ability to see your comments. So Angie's tuned in. Hi, Angie. Angie and I actually worked together at in a sterile processing department here in Minneapolis. And speaking of Minneapolis, we span the entire United States, the three of us. Becca, you're in California, correct?
I'm actually in Spokane, Washington.
Spokane, Washington. Okay.
The beautiful Pacific Northwest.
Beautiful, beautiful. And then Sarah, you're on the opposite side of the U.S. in Connecticut.
Yes. Got East Coast life.
East Coast life, West Coast life, and I am smack dab in the middle of the United States.
Landlocked.
Well, we've got 10,000 lakes, you know. It's a thing.
Oh yeah, right. There really are that many lakes.
Yeah, exactly. Well, there are more actually. So thank you both for sharing your journey to sterile processing. I think one of the common themes that I hear from people is, well, I kind of happened upon it, or I came across sterile processing or learned about it kind of on accident, something along those lines. And actually, my journey into sterile processing is relatively similar. I was a nanny all through college. And then I got my first job in the the healthcare industry as a medical sales rep. And that opened my eyes to sterile processing. It was how I learned about sterile processing, is where I fell in love with sterile processing, selling cleaning brushes specifically into the departments, and learning and getting to know the technicians who are responsible for this important job. Educating them, talking with them, having honest conversations about how difficult the job is, honestly, on a daily basis, how multitasking is a thing and how burnout is a thing and how you just keep going. And somehow this group of professionals in sterile processing or in CS has the ability to draw from this well inside themselves, right? This well that is seemingly limitless. And time and again, I come across professionals in this industry who seem to have that same mentality, two of which are Sarah B, Cruz, and Rebecca Kinney, which is why I invited you guys on this call to talk about motivation. I think it's one of those things that's just hard to come by and hard to find and hard to generate in yourself. So we're going to talk a lot about motivation. First things first, though, I know when we were setting this up, we had talked about the hashtag coffee-driven conversations. So cheers to both of you.
Yes.
Yes. Cheers to an afternoon/morning cup of coffee.
Yes.
I guess it's bad luck to not take a drink
Third
after
cup.
yours.
Right. Come on,
Right.
Come on, Lindsay.
I know. All right. So I have a question for you guys. The reason why this session came to be was a week ago. Becca, you posted on LinkedIn a post about gratitude and about humility and about decency and really about vulnerability in the human experience. And you said it can be so easy to forget the simple things when the world feels chaotic. And I feel like the more and more people talk about sterile processing these days, they mention the chaos that is not only healthcare in general right now, but sterile processing specifically because of that multitasking component and serving multiple departments, multiple customers in sterile processing. And so, Becca, when I saw that post, I immediately thought of Sarah, because Sarah, you and I have gotten to know each other. Earlier this year, you flew to Minnesota from Connecticut for a live in-person Beyond Clean conference.
Yeah, girl.
Which I was like,
that was so awesome.
It was awesome to have you there because, I mean, you flew in for it, and multiple people did, but it was so fun to get to know you there, because what I learned getting to know you both there and having you on the podcast is that your focus is primarily on turning sterile processing from, or transitioning sterile processing from just a job into a career. And so when I saw Becca's post about gratitude and humility, I thought, you know what, it would be such a cool conversation to have with both of you about those soft skills that are really critical in turning sterile processing from a job into a career. So that's where this conversation came to be. And what I would love to know is just to kind of get things started. You know, we've all come from somewhere. We've all experienced quote unquote failures or learning opportunities or times in our life where things didn't go necessarily according to plan. And so since this topic is about motivation, how do you guys motivate yourselves? And we'll get into how to motivate other people in a minute, but how do you guys motivate yourselves when you experience those times of personal failure? We'll call them learning opportunities. And Becca, why don't you go first?
Sure thing. You know, I think that over and over again, especially being in sales, like, I mean, I hear the word no for a living. Like, so you can't take it personal, but I think that I always have to go back and remind myself, hey, you were not a failure. You just had a setback. It's not a setback that defines you. It is a part of your growing process. And then I always laugh. I love this line. It says, try again, fail, but just fail better next time. And that always makes me laugh, but isn't it true? So I think when I overcome setbacks, it's just, you know, I am such a planner. I like everything to be like in its happy little box, but I have to realize that sometimes it doesn't go according to plan. Actually, most of the time it doesn't. But it's what do you learn in the process, and how do you get past that and say, okay, you know what? I am going to fail, but next time I'm going to fail a whole lot more gracefully. It's like one of my daughter's friends roller skates, and every time she falls, it is the most graceful fall I've ever seen. Like she can like fall backwards, and it's just like looks like she's like figure skating. And I'm like,
she meant to do it.
yeah. I mean, like, let's make it look like we meant to fail. Let's gracefully fail and take it as a learning experience. As hey, you know what? Let's embrace the suck. I was not awesome. Like maybe next time. Maybe next time I'm going to be a little more awesome. So just not letting it define you, going on to the next step and saying, I got this stuff. You know what? Yeah. So that's what works for me, is just kind of pumping myself up and telling myself, hey, I'm learning from this. I can gracefully fall. And it's my reaction to this that matters more than the failure itself.
Awesome. Sarah, what about you?
I think failure is a really big part of my CSS coming out story, I'll call it, because when I first got into the field, I really thought I had it going on. Like I was like, I worked in the OR. I know what a Kirsten is. I know how to take it apart, you know? So I really like felt much bigger than my practical application was. Ego check. So when I got into the field and actually started to work with these OGs, I call them, and these VIPs that have been doing it forever, I realized I knew nothing at all. So that was the biggest failure in that aspect for me. And just realizing that I didn't know everything. And I think I try to use that mindset in a lot of my overcoming failure or setbacks or whatever you want to call them. When I have a setback in that type of way, I make sure the next time I dig in deeper. And it's because I was too surface in my application that maybe the results that I wanted weren't exactly what I needed. So I try to take away what I had from my failure experience, because, you know, we have all these plans and what we think we need. And a lot of the times the type of failure we have shows a light and shines a light where we need our growth. So I try to take it as a learning opportunity. And honestly, if I was great at it from the beginning, where's the fun in that? Like, no way. Like, I'm just going to level up and grow into this different type of CS tech through my strives and my accomplishments. But what really makes me the type of technician that I am is the mounting setbacks. And believe me, there's like mountains. So it's like, that's what makes me the type of person and technician that I show up as work. So when I feel discouraged or I experience a setback, I just try to take it in grace and know that the next time it's going to be a different type of success, or maybe an even different type of failure, because you can fail at one thing once and you're probably going to suck at it the second time too. But you just have to keep trying and applying, and Lord knows if you keep getting the same results, that's insane. So maybe try something different. So that's how I try to look at setback.
That's amazing.
Right. And don't you think, Sarah, like offering yourself a measure of grace is so necessary to just step back and go, you know what? I need to offer myself some grace here. I do a lot of great things. And maybe I didn't do it as good as I could have, but like, we got this. I'm going to give myself some grace and not be my own worst critic today. So you really struck a chord when you said that.
Yeah, I literally have to check out from my own and check into where I've come from. It's so important.
Yeah. Sure. So when you're channeling that, when you're using the self-motivation skills that you've built through the areas of opportunity in your life this far, and you're using that so let's talk about your online presence for both of you right now, because you use your online presence to motivate other people in sterile processing. And I think you do it in similar ways, but also very, very unique ways, very true to yourselves, I'll call them. You can really see your personalities come through in your online presence. What have you seen has made the biggest impact when you made the decision to take to social media and to create a website, to really access sterile processing professionals looking for career development information, looking for professional development, strategy, looking for everyday sunshine and joy? Becca, I feel like that's something you certainly bring to the table. What was the thought process behind using your online presence to achieve those things?
Do you want to go ahead, Sarah?
So I never thought I would create any type of online application. I was just this CS tech floating around, checking instruments, doing what I had to do. And I started to realize that a lot of the CS techs that I was working with were evolving out of the field. And I truly like being a central sterile technician. And for people to go and branch off to different things, like, listen, I'm not here to yuck anybody's yum. You want to be a nurse, you go for it. Kudos. I can't be a nurse. But there was so much disgruntled movement behind why people transitioned out of the field. And that bothered me because I love what I do. Even decon and even answering the OR phone when the doctor is angry. There's a certain aspect of it that brings me joy. So then I realized that I want to offer a onboarding process for individuals when they join the central sterile field. We have so much hard skill access available out there through department educators or field technicians or even experts in our field that offer so much hard skill application for us to become better techs. But there's not really a niche or a demand for how can I stay passionate in what I do. And I want to try and stabilize the central sterile workforce in that way. I want to help guide, teach, and develop individuals through a professional development into a career, because our patients don't need jobs. They need people who are passionate in their profession to have the outcomes that they need. And I feel so inspired by that. And when I get messages about certification pathways, or I'm about to have a job interview, this is my first time applying at a hospital, what do I do? And really taking the applications of the soft skills that I try to hone in on with the guiding, teaching, and developing, and the hard skills that I practice daily in my full-time job, and mixing them together, that's what creates anchor central sterile technicians. And that's what our industry and our patients demand. And that's really where I find my why and my oomph. So that's my big thing.
Dang, that was good. Yeah. I feel like following that up. Can I get a virtual high five? Like, Sarah, let me down. Okay.
Yes,
Thank you. Oh, that is so good, Sarah. Hey, David, we're glad you're on from Eugene, Oregon. It's so good to see you. I know you and I have had a couple off the books conversations and direct messages on LinkedIn. And my why behind all of this is that, to be honest, like, I think that we look at Sarah and I, and we are very alike and very different at the same time. Because I tend to take the 30,000 foot view from up here and see what I see in 12 departments and see what I see with 30,000 connections and see the whole big picture. But it didn't start out that way. It started out as I woke up at 4:30 one morning and I had to be to a hospital in Idaho. And I spent like an hour and a half prepping for this educational event. And I figured out all the damage types that they had and catered the education to perfectly meet their needs. And I felt like on fire, except I didn't have enough caffeine. But aside from that, I was ready to go like freaking like blow their minds. Do you want to know how mind blowing it was, you guys? I showed up, 3 people called in sick, and there were 2 people there. One of them, I'm sure, showed up only because I brought donuts. And I was so disappointed. Like, I'm like, oh my gosh, I drove 5 hours today to talk to 2 people. And one of them was halfway asleep and only liked the Krispy Kreme that I bought, which I did drive out of the way to go get, and so I was like, there's got to be a better way to reach people, to share this education that is so, so necessary to our industry. And so I decided to log into LinkedIn. Actually, I had heard some people say like, hey, this is kind of a good platform. And I'm like, I got this. I don't know my login. Forgot password. Like, I think a lot of people are there. And so I get my password and it's like, do you want to connect to everybody in your cell phone? And I was like, no, nobody in my cell phone cares about leak testing a flexible endoscope. So no. So along the way, like I started to realize like, holy crud balls. This is a great, you're welcome, Lindsay. This is such a great platform. Such a great platform to just say, like, you can specifically connect to people, exactly the audience you want to connect to, and you can build those connections that are your ideal client or the person you're exactly trying to reach. So over 2 years, I've taken that time to not only develop a roadmap to help other people get there in my own business, but that's grown from about 25 people. I'm like, hey, maybe I can reach a room of 25. And now all of a sudden I'll make a post and, I'm connected to 30,000 people. Now I'm like, oh my gosh, 6,000 people just learned about leak testing today. And every time I post something that I know, like I love to share the things I didn't know when I was a sterile processing technician. So that, Lindsay, you're still trying not to laugh, I know.
I love it. I love it.
So I like to share with people just simply the things that I didn't know. And then I like to help other businesses and teach them how they can create the same success on LinkedIn. Because what good is our voice and what good is our knowledge if we don't pass that knowledge on to other people who were once a beginner too?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So, you mentioned something that it struck a chord with me. When I used to do medical device sales, selling, cleaning brushes and tip protectors and tray corners and, those little things that make such a big difference to your average day in the sterile processing department. I used to also, drive 5 hours to do an in-service at 11 p.m. So I made sure to get second and third shift at the same time, or, wake up at 3 a.m. so that I could hit the 5:30, 6 a.m. shift change or huddle. And one of the things that I had to sort of get over or get used to was the fact that I could control my message. I could control how I gave that message, but I couldn't set the expectation that it would be light bulb moments every time. Like I couldn't set that expectation for people. I had to do what I could to try to be a mirror for them, essentially. Like if I show my excitement, if I show my enthusiasm, if I show my passion during these in-services, maybe a glimmer of that will translate and will transfer onto someone who maybe didn't care as much the day before. So one of the questions that came through, and hi to everyone who's joining in, Erica Meeks, good to see you. Evan, great to see you, another Minnesotan. Yes, David Beerworth, hello. I know Becca already said hello to you, but Harry just actually asked a really great question. What should managers do to increase passion for this field? Because for us, I mean, Becca, you work for a vendor manufacturer. I work for a company in the sterile processing industry. Sarah, you're in the field, working in the departments. But from all of our different perspectives, how can we encourage and give managers the tools to increase passion for this field? And one thing that I know to be sure is that managers are essentially walking billboards for we'll call it the energy of the department. Mm-hmm. They're walking billboards for, like, as far as leadership is concerned in a department, if something goes wrong, if something is really stressful, I'm going to look to the leader of the department to see how exactly I should be reacting to this. Is the leader of the department taking it in stride and all of a sudden pulling in all the resources necessary to solve this problem? Or is it just a throw your hands up, I give up, should close the door of the office? And I feel like as far as instilling passion and encouraging passion, that's one thing that leaders of departments can really take to heart, is that people are going to react to your reaction. And they're potentially going to embody your reaction to different situations. So what are both of your thoughts on that?
You can go first, Sarah. I see your words ready to come out.
So I'm an educator right now in the field, and I work on an equal setting of the department manager. So we both report to the same boss, so to speak. I hate that word boss, but we have the same guy in charge. And so he and I work in a collaboration to try and incorporate education with management in a way that encourages the permanence of those actions. And I think it's really big that working with him in that dynamic, that we understand that managers, and not just top tier managers, supervisors, lead techs, techs 2, techs 3, the people that step in for leads when they're not present, the way that they present their own passion in the workplace, like Lindsay was talking about, is very important. And a specific tangible way to gauge that is really how they promote their colleagues' workplace authenticity. Workplace authenticity is so important. And that's not just saying, oh, well, this is me. No, it's actively challenging who you are, how you show up. Being transparent in your errors is huge, especially in leadership. It's important for people to see that you make mistakes too, and that you can correct yourself with the group. You're a human. So when you can show humanistic characteristics in a field where we're taking care of people that we can't even see and bringing the genuineness and the workplace authenticity with it, it really sets your department up and the people that are seeing you for success. And I'm all about creating, things. Soft skills are really hard to gauge tangibly and make physical indicators of success. So those are just some physical indicators that, if you're showing up and you're not reacting to a problem appropriately, you think, and you stop, you readdress it, and then you're actually showing that to your staff while you're doing it, that's huge. That pulls your staff back in. That makes them want to support you. That doesn't make them your staff anymore. That makes them your colleagues. Go through the problem together and show them why and how we can get through it in that way. So those are just some little tidbits. And I try to motivate through workplace authenticity. So yes, I am this weird at work also.
And Sarah, I can really speak to that. When you say, let's really accentuate the why. Because Harry, I see your question on here, and it's so hard to keep staff motivated. And you had mentioned staff and customers. So that's two different questions. whether people understand what we do, and whether our staff is motivated to do their job. But I can tell you something that is very, very empowering for sterile processing staff. And that's to let them understand their job better by allowing them to go into procedures. Work with the director of surgery to schedule a time when they can go watch a lab case, when they can go in and see how these instruments are used that they're reprocessing every day. Because until I was a vendor, I had never been in a surgery. I worked in sterile processing for 7 years, and I can't tell you how many thousands of sets I put together. But did I ever know how a kerosene rongeur was used? Did I ever know why a lap grasper has that little tiny piece of plastic and that cap on it? No. And I didn't even know why it was important. Well, when the physician is in the abdomen and that cap is on there, the abdomen is insufflated. And so they can see and get to where they need to go. If that little tiny cap is not on there, air is going out, the abdomen is collapsing, and they can no longer see. But I'm a very hands-on person. You've got to tell me why I need to care. Because if you don't tell me why I need to care, this pen is just as good as a kerosene rongeur. This cup of coffee may as well be a lap grasper. They're just things. So I think that it's actually tying the importance of it to it, and also asking one very, very important question. If this was my loved one on the table, how would I treat this set? Would I cut this corner? Would I take a shortcut? Or would I go through all the evaluation points I know are necessary? So even sometimes I remember when I was working in the field, like tying a face to it. Okay. Because it happened. It got real for me when my dad had a heart attack and got flown to the hospital for open heart surgery. And I was like, oh my gosh, who put together the CV set? Oh my gosh, I got to go see who did the peel pack. I'm like, Becca, get the heck out of the department. Your dad might die. I'm like, okay, I really hope it was someone good. But that's sad. Like, we shouldn't have to say, I hope it was someone who gave it credit about their job today. So, I think that it's acting as if your loved one is on the table and empowering your staff to understand the application and use of the items that they reprocess every day.
So you bring up the title of this presentation, and you said, how are you going to be motivated to care? And this conversation is titled Who Cares, for a very specific reason. And I do want to spend some time focused on the idea of caring, because as healthcare professionals, we provide care to our patients, right? That's kind of high level. As sterile processing professionals, the care and the handling of instrumentation is our direct responsibility. But as human beings, is there a capacity for how much we actually care, do you think? Because let's take a look at it. In healthcare right now, it currently employs 16 million people in the United States. Okay, that's 11% of all jobs that exist in the United States alone. And by 2026, it's projected to account for 18% of all jobs. That's a lot of people. But inconveniently, we're also expecting a ton of shortages in the next 10 years in nurses, in surgical techs, in dental hygienists, in sterile processing techs, and medical assistants. All of these critical pieces that function to make the healthcare in the United States, the healthcare system work. Demand for these positions is going to grow, but in the next 10 years, it's unlikely to be met. So I love the analogy, or I love the idea of putting yourself on the operating table or putting a loved one on the operating table. But in both of your minds, do you think that concept will only get you too far because of the limited resources provided to the departments in terms of education, in terms of staffing, in terms of pay? Do all of those things at all sort of add to that capacity of how much we can actually care?
Oh, that's a loaded question, Lynn.
It's been on my mind.
Well, I'll quickly answer it because I can see Sarah steaming right now to answer this question.
After you. Please.
I truly believe that, yes, there is going to be a shortage. And Veronica, I see your question. Going in does make a difference, but how do I change people's way of thinking when they just don't care about the job? And here's the thing, regardless of the profession, I mean, I don't even want to say the C word, which is COVID, by the way. I don't even want to say that word because it's become yes, it's overwhelming, and yes, it's chaotic. But the only way to change a way of thinking is to embrace, hey, this is our reality. And it's on each individual technician to say, I'm going to show up today and I'm going to slay it. And Veronica, I know you're thinking right now, but not everybody is motivated, Becca. Like 72%. Now let's bump it up to 90% of my staff. Everyone but my team lead doesn't really care. They just clock in and they clock out and they show up. And I think it's on us as leaders using platforms like this, being a manager, to encourage people to highlight the good parts of the day. So I always say, as I run my own business and I've started my own business, like, you have to keep going even when no one's clapping. You have to celebrate the small wins. So when your department does something that's a win, make it a bigger deal than it is. Just like a mom, as a mom, I have to make it a big deal when my daughter does something exceptional and really praise her for the best practice. Or, in the case of your CS techs, like letting them know, hey, you guys, you know what we accomplished today? We reprocessed, in the last week, 790 trays. The operating room had 300 cases. And you know how many delays we had? We had 3. Holy crud, you guys. Freaking nailed it. Mind blown. Like, I feel like I need to do the jazz fingers. But I think it's really, celebrating those small wins. Celebrating the steps, but also just talking with your staff members about their concerns or frustrations, because I know I feel most important when I'm active, when I'm doing stuff. So if you have a huge project, you say you're working on the inventory and the tracking system, share with your team what that giant project is and ask them for help. And that will not only make them feel important, but it will enable them to say, hey, I'm a part of this process and I'm helping do something that matters. So that's my answer. Veronica, hopefully that was helpful to you.
Sarah, what about you? How can we take some of the things that are working against us in terms of unlimited or limited resources or lack thereof to really combat the things that are working against us in terms of allowing us to have the energy and the capacity to care?
Yeah, I think it's a huge issue, this idea of compassion fatigue in our field, because we don't directly work with a patient. A lot of the times it's a misconception that we don't experience that. And it couldn't be further from the truth. I think a big part of Central Sterile Services is that you are compelled to care for ones you can't see. And through that, it's a very humbling profession, because you always have to think of the person that you were never going to meet. And a lot of the times the realistics is sometimes you can't get into the room to ever see a surgery because of staffing issues, under resources, overbooked schedules, or appropriately booked. I don't want to use that word all willy-nilly, overbooked, because, job security, but I digress. I think with the alarming statistics that are coming, the biggest way that Central Sterile Services can be proactive about that is to, one, move out of reactivity, whereas we're scrambling to fill these positions. And now we're trying to think of a way to incorporate education. And I think now's the time, because we're at this position of almost absolute nothing. Like, we have departments throughout the nation that are falling apart over rehauls. Like, hospitals are just catching on to the fact that Central Sterile Services is the heartbeat, the mitochondria. So it's like that idea has already been there for so long, and everybody's just catching on. So yeah, that's why I can't do anything when my autoclave is broken. So it's like, how do we fix that, though? And I think a big action is changing staffing structures, not just how we staff, but where we staff, and including education inside of that. I want to challenge the Central Sterile industry and the application of Central Sterile Services to incorporate an educator in every department. educators are so important, not just because they teach hard skills, but they help alleviate pressure from the management or the manager in the department to introduce process improvements. A manager can't get yelled at 1 minute by a doctor and then just go downstairs and expect to case cart audit soft supplies equally while he's making sure the autoclave that's broken doesn't have any implants in it and he's like, it's too much. That plate is too full. I want to challenge our profession to redistribute responsibilities in a way that our colleagues and staff win. So when we have little, we just have to think of how we distribute it differently. How are we going to distribute the resources? And by doing that, you can take this bell curve of employees, the biggest area of employees lie in the 9-to-5 mentality, right? And then you have your lowest end of the bell curve, and I don't want to call them underachievers, but they're trying really hard, but they're not exactly meeting hospital metrics. And then you have your overachievers. And how do you transition people in your department from the I'm really trying hard, but I'm not producing, and the hey, I'm just here for a paycheck job mentality to the overachievers? And now, believe me, you don't want a bunch of overachievers in your apartment, like your department. like the go-getters, they're great, but oh my God, sometimes they can have the thickest head. That was me when I started, just in case you needed to revert back to that story, But how do you transition and move your bell curve more to this parabola idea that, you have more people that are willing to put themselves out there to maybe become overachievers-esque? So that's the big challenge. And I do believe the best way to help people move out of this job mentality is to redistribute resources to make sure that your leadership and management is supported and to build passion into your practices. Yes, I think people should be passionate about what they do outside of work, but damn it, give them a reason to be passionate in work. Be transparent, hold a huddle. And yeah, I'm super food motivated. I'm bringing pizza in today for my staff. And I know everybody's tired of getting pizza in the department. So let's think of a passion pizza that doesn't have pepperoni on it. How can we get that in there? What process can we put in place to promote the motivation that we expect from our colleagues? And that's really where I want to challenge that. And I think that's the biggest way to compete and combat this growing trend of not enough staff for the 2026 metrics that was mentioned.
Absolutely. And we just had a comment come through about the specific facilities being told that an educator has to have a specific degree in order to teach and educate others. Sarah, as an educator, what would be your reaction to that, or your advice? For anyone looking to enter an educator role, do you see a consistent career path that should exist? Or is there one that you know of that currently does exist?
I don't know if there's a path that exists. I don't know if I'm just off a beaten path, but true fact, I don't have a degree. There, I said it. Yeah. That's something that people don't really know about me. And this is where it's important to hone your craft. Yes, does having a degree set you above the rest? Sure. But there's other ways to hone your craft and show your passion and become adamant and really make an impact outside of a degree. Now, I'm not knocking anybody that's got a degree either. Kudos for you. I gave it my college try. So obviously it didn't go that well. So, but anyways, I work on competencies in my department. So I have a competency for the technicians that I evaluate, but I have a competency too. Now, granted, I made my own competency, but I give the competency to my colleague, the manager, and he runs the competency on me so that I can become the educator that he needs for his staff, because it's our department, but I have to show up in a way that he needs me to. Am I helping his colleagues and his coworkers get where he needs? And I think it's defeating when we set limits to the type of people that can apply for jobs. I understand that filtering and finding the desired candidate is just as important. But I think when you set that bar of just a degree, it's kind of underserving because our industry also offers phenomenal certifications that aren't a degree. They're just certifications. But if you get somebody who's a triple crown or has that endoscopic reprocessing from CBSPD, you better consider them. That's way better. Like, I don't want to say that's way better, but dang, that triple crown is hard to get. Okay. And that costs money too. All right. That endoscopic, like, reprocessing certification, I have been studying for that for about 7 months. It's no joke. Like, it's hard. Mm-hmm. So it's like, there's different accreditations that facilities can take into consideration that might actually bring more value to an educator role.
Well, and I think, I'm going to take the 30,000 foot view
yes.
again, because Veronica, I challenge you. You don't have to have a BS degree. You don't have to get the praise. You don't have to be certified to show up to work today and tell somebody and educate somebody on something you didn't know before. To teach them what might lead to patient safety, to guide them in that way. We don't need letters behind our name or a pay raise in order to educate somebody. Like, I use LinkedIn and I spend hours weekly creating content and writing for a blog because I am passionate. Do you think that I make a penny doing this? No, I do this because I'm passionate about teaching people patient safety, teaching them infection control, and helping them. So I think you have to look back onto yourself and say, how can I add genuine value and add to the patient safety table and be the leader, whether I'm glorified or not? Whether anybody tells me today that I need a BS degree to educate, I say that's BS. You don't need an educator degree to educate at all. You can be an educator exactly where you are. We're educating sitting at home right now talking to you. Mm-hmm. And I think, speaking of education, Lindsay, this is even going to get a CE, right? How do people do that?
Yes. So once this conversation is complete, and don't worry, it's not ending yet. But once this presentation or once this conversation is complete, the on-demand versions will be available through Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. And we'll actually post a link to a quiz that you can input the code word. That code word, I will tell you in a minute. But right now, we are going to do an audience poll question.
Ooh, I love this.
Are you ready? Okay. Everyone who's tuned in right now, if you could get every single sterile processing or CSSD technician in the same room for 30 minutes and train them on all at one time on the exact same thing, what topic or piece of equipment would you cover?
You can only pick one?
Only one. Yep, you have 30 minutes with every sterile processing technician on the planet. Everyone will leave that room on the same page about one thing.
Oh, crap.
What is that one thing? And everyone tuned in, please enter your comment because I would love to see what you would train them on.
Oh,
I don't even know. I don't have a type box here, so I'm lucky because one? Come on.
Just one. We're getting some in.
Just
Harry says
thing.
terminal manual cleaning. All right. I encourage everyone else tuned in. What else do you think? You have 30 minutes with every sterile processing tech on the planet to train them all on one thing. Natalie. Welcome, Natalie. Site infections.
Oh, good one, Natalie. And also, Natalie, you are PhD level educator as well. Rockstar. Shout out to you.
Agreed.
So I just had to throw that in.
Erica Meeks, IUSS.
IUSS.
Okay.
Ooh, yeah, I got strong feelings about that.
All right, Veronica, importance of decontamination and processing. Harry coming in with the communication.
Communication.
Oh, yeah, Harry.
Yes.
Preach it, brother.
All right, Becca, what would be your one thing?
Ooh, I would have to say how to prevent surgical site infection and everything that is important and that leads up to that, from care and handling of the instrumentation to preventative maintenance to all of the things that prevent surgical site infection from happening, because that in 30 minutes, you could back like 5 different points into surgical site infection and still point back to the same topic. So that's my final answer.
Yes.
Okay. Sarah, what about you?
I have a lot of strong feelings about IUSS and the dreaded word flash, but then communication came out of nowhere and I was like, oh, that's the cake. So I would go with communication.
Yeah.
I think it's so important. It's like closed circuit communication, how the perioperative triforce works together towards patient safety, how we can overcome these communication problems to speak the same language in patient safety, not to mention the dreaded idea of shift wars is just a big presentation of how people don't know how to talk to each other in the department. And obviously I love to talk, so I would just do communication.
Nice. I'm going to have to go with David on this one. Biofilm is such an intense and important and critical subject. And Wava Truscott has been someone, we have a joke on our team. It's not really a joke. It's actually very true. We call ourselves Wavites. I think Mike Matthews coined that term, but Wava has this ability to break down the topic of biofilm in a way that makes you leave her presentation knowing and understanding so much more than you went into it. We've gotten at some Beyond Clean conferences, we've gotten feedback that has said, sitting through Wava's presentation on biofilm actually taught me more than my entire college course on microbiology. So hats off to you, Wava.
Yeah.
And so, biofilm would certainly be top on my list. Point of use cleaning, Ashish Prasad, thank you. Yes, that's another really great topic. So, all right, wonderful. So back to that code word for CE credits. On the on-demand posts on YouTube, Facebook, and LinkedIn of this conversation, there will be a link to a quiz. You can click on that link, and the code word that you will need to know is beyond motivation, all one word, beyond motivation. Okay.
I feel like we should tie that with a dun dun dun
drum roll.
Beyond motivation.
I love it. Beyond motivation. I love it. All right. So something I want to, we have about 8 minutes left, and I would love to talk a little bit about practical ways that department leaders can motivate their staff. You guys both of you ladies have done a phenomenal job educating your network of people. And Sarah, just knowing you, I'm assuming, and I can make that safe assumption that you've done a phenomenal job educating your department. But I would love to know, and I'm sure the leaders who are going to be tuning into this and are tuned in now would love to know some practical ways that they can motivate their staff, even if they're simple ways, because it's step by step. Some of these things just require baby steps. And I think overall motivation and increasing the passion levels in a department may be one of those step-by-step opportunities.
So thank you. I appreciate that. But my colleagues where I work are really receptive to the education that I'm rolling out. And we really do roll out a lot of process improvements, and they just really dive in and they go for it. And a lot of that is because of the motivation and the dedication that we try to create in the process improvements that we roll out. So just to kind of touch base on what I mentioned before, it's really important that processes aren't just hard skills, they include soft skill application. Don't just tell your staff, hey, I need you to care about your job. Give them specific ways that they can gauge if they care about their job. So for example, we can say, don't cut corners. But what does that mean? Because you can even round corners. That's what I call it, rounding corners, where you're not exactly cutting it off, but you're shaving some stuff, right? Yeah. So what does that mean? Don't cut a corner. Just say, hey, when you use the 3-sync system in decon, I need you to do the 1, the soak, not long enough because, biofilms. And then 3, I need you to make sure that you're brushing every cannula with a pipette or a cannula cleaner, and so that is a physical way for them to gauge, and a tangible way for them to gauge if they're doing a process correctly. And you're being very clear about what you expect from them. And when you give the individuals you work with the way to gauge their own success, that creates self-motivation. I am the biggest cheerleader, not just in work, but in life too. Like, I'll randomly just like break out like singing, or like I'll just break out into like, yeah, like, you know what I mean? So we'll save that. But it's really important as leadership to vocalize and be completely transparent about what you expect from your colleagues and staff and technicians that you're working with. They're not working for you. Yes. We are working together in the department. Let's use transparency and tangibility to build a workplace rapport. And even more specifically, I'm a huge fan of lean processing. I'm all about it. Like, I love huddle. I love recognizing people. And the biggest thing I changed was, like, oh, you want to recognize anyone. And everyone go, oh, I'm going to recognize everybody. And I'm like, yeah, that's great and all, but who? Why? Why do you want to recognize this person? Shout it out. Like, pick one person and say why they're great in front of the entire team. And yeah, sometimes that means not everybody gets recognized, but if there's one person that's doing a phenomenal job, man, say it, do it. And then encourage your team to do that around you. It's great when leadership tells people they're doing a good job, especially when you've given them those physical indicators of success. But when their teammates are telling them they're doing a good job, just randomly, like, hey, you turned over that IUSS load really quick this morning. Nice job. Huge. That person's going to go into their lunch break feeling a little bit better, right? Like, come on. So I think that's a really big way, is make it contagious. Let's make it contagious.
And I would piggyback on that. I posted before, every Friday I post motivational content. So saying these 3 simple words, try it today, you guys. I challenge you. I appreciate you. And say it again. And say it again, because, as going back up to the 30,000 foot view, iron sharpens iron. So we work together. I have an idea. A manager creates an environment where ideas are welcome. I have an idea. Sarah has an idea. That ignites a passion in Lindsay to interview us, and it multiplies. So 1 + 1 = 3, and 3 squared and more. So you have to think, I appreciate you can go a long way, and let's motivate each other to say, hey, this is an environment where success is an option. It doesn't have to be boring, and we are here to support you and listen to you and be here, because bottom line, patient safety matters, and we care about you. So I appreciate you. And Lindsay and Sarah both, I appreciate both of you. I'm really happy to have this opportunity. I mean that sincerely.
That was fire.
That's amazing.
Boom.
All right. Sarah and Becca, thank you so much for sharing parts of yourselves, parts of your professional journey, and honestly, some really, really great nuggets of practical information and ways that people can motivate, and that leaders of departments can motivate their staff and encourage passion in bite-sized pieces. Sarah, I love that you say, let's make it contagious. That's such a great statement. If you talk to someone and you make their day, maybe they'll feel a little bit better and they'll do something and make someone else's day. That stuff is contagious. Best practice is contagious. If you see your coworkers going above and beyond to do what's right, you're going to think to yourself, wow, that's the way it should be. And same goes for leaders. If you're leading in a way that's encouraging autonomy and encouraging people to raise their voices when they have issues or when they have questions, that's going to be contagious as well. The more questions that get asked in departments, the better, because those create learning opportunities. So Sarah and Becca, thank you so much for joining me today on this Beyond Clean LinkedIn Live. Everyone who's still on, there's going to be a link to the quiz in the on-demand version of this on all the social platforms on the Beyond Clean pages. Click on that quiz, enter the code word Beyond Motivation, and I wish you all an incredible day. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye, guys.